Welcome to this Wednesday edition of the Morning Briefing. I'm Jeff DeForest along with Mike Lubitz, and we're very happy to have you with us here on nofilter.net after what we can only call a mashugana day that I had yesterday. I think I mentioned on yesterday's morning briefing that I was on hold with the doctor's office and they started playing the Exorcist music. It's still ringing in my head. And once again, it's like as if acid reflux has encompassed my entire being. And I'm spitting up pea soup, which I would imagine Jim Harbaugh is. So we were talking about this on a show earlier this morning. Lubie and I were talking about this whole Jim Harbaugh suspension and how bizarre the entire story is. And whether you're a Michigan fan or not, it does seem odd. Now, the NCAA, I would imagine, is less influential than the World Boxing Council
Yeah, if you
was,
notice, they
and
didn't even do
probably
anything.
less on the level
Yeah, this
in
is the big
terms of
one.
credibility
Yeah.
and its ability to go ahead and administrate what was going on in college football. Who can? I mean, who can overcome the control of the money, the fabulous moolah? There'll be nobody can. And this is an interesting story on so many different levels. As you look at Jim Harbaugh being suspended supposedly for the final three games. Now, the fascinating part to me, Luby,
Mhm.
is that you have Jim Harbaugh, a Michigan coach, beloved in the state of Michigan. At different times that they've had their differences with him. Well, when they're losing,
Yeah, 3 years ago.
he wasn't so fucking popular. But now he's a god. Everybody's wearing khaki pants. Incredible.
Doctors
And
are so
talking, in ideas and philosophies that nobody can comprehend. I mean, he's right up there with Mike McDaniel, the head coach of the Miami Dolphins, in terms of what the fuck did this guy just say? I don't know.
bad.
But the issue is, what was Michigan spying on other teams and decoding their signals? I mean, this is Carlos
Mhm.
Beltran banging on a garbage can and telling Jose Altuve, "Yeah, go ahead and steal. He's coming home." They knew everything. Who could decipher, Luby? Who could decipher college football signals as they're being sent in? You have a guy on the sideline that looks like The Rock. You have three quarterbacks, and they're in perfect sync, almost as if you were watching rhythmic gymnastics at the Olympic Games. And for all we know, the cheerleaders are sending in the next play. Who could figure this out? And if you did by attending another team's games, so what? I don't know. I mean, is it that outrageous, that egregious, that unthinkable that in any sport you would want to go ahead and take some kind of a scouting, of the opponent that was upcoming, that you might be playing later on in the season? Would you not send somebody to watch them play one time?
Okay, it depends on what the rules say. It depends on what we know we could get away with. It depends on what we've done at other places. Because remember, he was at Stanford. He's
Yeah.
coached college before, so he knows the limitations. Like,
Unscrupulous would be possibly something that you could associate with Jim Harbaugh's career, at least in terms of suspicions and assertions.
yes. Well, he's never really gotten in trouble, but he seems like the guy that would push the limits and doesn't feel bad about it, which is all of them. So I don't cast aspersions against him. But again, once you get caught, you get caught. Like it is what it is. To cry like you're the victim, I think that's utterly pathetic. I really do. It's like go for it, take your chances. Shit, we got caught. Like I always think that's weird when like, what do you mean? But they did it.
Yeah.
Well, when they get caught, they'll be screwed too.
That assistant coach that took over the head coaching reins,
Like, why are you
you had his
crying?
name earlier this morning.
Jaron Moore. Like I feel
Sharon
bad for
Moore.
the guy, but why are you crying? Like, come on.
You would have thought you were watching Jimmy Swaggart breaking down after he got nailed for banging his secretary. Excuse me, but I have sinned. Like, how pathetic is this? I mean, men don't cry in football.
Oh wow,
That was worthless and that was weak. But the fascinating thing, one of many fascinating things about the whole story, movie, is that Ann Arbor is it's a great academic school, is it not? It puts
it
out
is.
some of the top people. I mean, their graduate programs. You can't argue that their academics are right up there with anybody. A friend of mine went there. He became a very esteemed epidemiologist. In fact, if they had come to him instead of Fauci, they might have staved off COVID-19. It would have been nothing more than a mild cold, my friend. That's how good they are at Michigan when it comes to academics. Now, I would imagine they turned out any number of people from their law school that have gone on to great distinction. I can't name you any off the top of my head because guess what? We wouldn't know if they put a guy on the Supreme Court necessarily. I mean, they had a guy as president, right? I don't know if he went to the graduate program there. Gerald Ford
Ford. Yep.
as a
Yep.
president.
Yep.
All right, so they've had any number of high level achieving people there, and yet the only guy that we know about that is associated with Michigan outside of Bo Schembechler is Jim Harbaugh.
Yes. Yeah.
Now that being said, how did they not at least have one judge that had bought and owned, and they could have called on Friday night as soon as this insidious ruling was handed down that was not justified on any basis. I mean, this was right up there with stripping some UFC guy of his intercontinental middleweight belt. Nothing was really defined by the Big Ten as far as I could see in this story. As they said, well, we know that they did something and it's more on the school. It's not necessarily the coach. We haven't pinpointed anything there yet. But by the way, he's out. You're out. Seemed a little bizarre because remember Charlie Pell at the University of Florida? He was handing out a grant that was, I mean, ironically named in his honor somehow. Not his honor, but in his namesake.
The Pell Grant, yeah.
And the Pell Grant. He's handing them out like he's handing out wedding invitations. By the time they finished their investigation and decided to go ahead and administrate some kind of punishment and or consequences of this, Pell was dead. It takes forever.
Exactly.
But not in this case. I mean, the decision was impacted immediately. How is it that Michigan alumni weren't able to call some judge in the middle of the night there on Friday and say, listen, Joe, we better get this overturned tomorrow, or it's not going to be so good for you?
Or at least stall it. Yeah, you would think. I didn't think there was any way he was going to be suspended during the season. He already happened once. Like, you would think they'd stall it. He'd go to the NFL and they would just
some kind of hearing, anything.
Yeah, the fact that it went through, I'm like, oh my God, wow, Michigan, you don't have any pull.
I'm assuming that this is going to be overturned. Unfortunately, it has consumed the entire college football narrative for the last couple of weeks because what? We're infatuated with scandal.
Yes.
And I keep coming back to this. I just don't think it's that outrageous. If he had gone into the offices of Baylor and stolen their playbook, maybe okay, that's not too cool, Jimmy. You could have stopped short of that. They still were going to beat most of these opponents by 40 points anyway. So it seemed inconsequential. Some people just can't help themselves, right?
That's
We were talking about that earlier. The perfect example, the movie Rounders with Matt Damon and Ed Norton Jr., who, or is it just Ed Norton? Ed Norton Jr. was playing for the 49ers,
No,
the Cowboys. Yeah.
Ed Norton Jr. I think his name is Ed
That was Ed Norton, yeah.
I think his name's Ed Norton Jr., actually.
Is it Junior? Yeah. I mean, it was a great movie. Rounders was way ahead of its time in terms of the degenerate movies. I would put it up there just a shade below the original Gambler with James Caan, Axel 3.
He's listed as Ed Norton. You're right, Ed Norton.
Ed Norton, yeah. I don't know why I wanted to throw a junior on there because all of a sudden I had him as a football player. Here's Ed Norton Jr. I tell you what, that's just like the old man.
He was great with the Niners.
Anyway, Norton plays this character called Worm, and Matt Damon is a just stud poker player. I mean, no pun intended there. He's great. He's about to clean up a big mess. They're playing some cops in upstate New York, and Damon's about to take them down for all of the money that they need to pay off this bookie, get out of debt, and have enough money to funnel their dream and fuel their dream of going to Las Vegas and playing in the World Series of Poker. But Norton, as Worm, just can't help himself. He has to cheat. So even though Damon ignores the first few times that he gives him the signal that all of a sudden he's going to be dealt pocket aces,
I'm good.
He goes ahead and continues to do it, and they end up getting caught, and the cops beat the shit out of them, take all of their money, and they're in an even bigger jackpot when it's all over.
Yes.
But some people just can't help themselves. So like you're asking yourself, in the case of Bill Belichick or Jim Harbaugh, what do you need to do this for? If it's even slightly outside the parameters or guidelines of something that would be considered, unpunishable.
That's my thing. Look, I know there are different levels of wrongdoing. And when people act like everything's the same, they're wrong. There are different levels. There are. But I don't want to go the other way either. Well, they didn't need to do it. Then why did you do it? Don't do it then. Like your schedule is cake almost every year. You have two games: Michigan, Penn State, Michigan. The rest of them you probably should win. I'm sorry, Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, Ohio State. The rest of them you should win. Okay, so just be good at your job and win those games. Like if you want to do this, that's fine, but don't be shocked if you get caught. Like it is what it is. Like they're not egregious. He shouldn't get the death penalty. He shouldn't be fired. Fine, but there should be penalties. Like
it's hard to believe though, and it seems very selective. It does. I'm not a Michigan fan. I don't mean to sound like a Michigan shill. I'm just somebody that's a sports fan that's interested in at least some level of equity or fairness. Okay. And we've seen, schools that you have to think are just massively piling up all kinds of cheating violations that don't do anything on the level, and they're rarely investigated and seldom are penalized for any kind of indiscretions. And then there are other schools that seem to be universally targeted.
Yes.
And right now, it does appear that everybody's got their eyeballs on Harbaugh for some reason, and this is they bought a kid a cheeseburger. And who knows what his involvement was in this? You would have to think, okay, he was well aware of it if it was benefiting the team to enough of an extent to even trigger this investigation to begin with. But who's calling for his head? Greg Schiano? With his fucking Rutgers team? I mean, no, we knew Schiano here. He's a good defensive guy. He's done some decent things there. He was really the most beloved coach in football the first year he took over at Rutgers because they covered every point spread.
Yes.
They were garbage, but they covered every spread. And if you're a spread-beaten coach, should there not also be an award at the end of every football season, college and pros, spread-beating coach of the year? That's the guy that we want to honor.
That's great. That's actually, I like that. That's classic.
Andy Reid, he could go be eating Malamars all day long and winning with Mahomes. That doesn't take any really, deep talent. Most people could win with the kind of lineups that he's out there. I'm not saying he is not a contributor to their success. But the guy that beats the spread with a shit team like the Houston Texans, that's the guy. Brian Flores, that's the guy that deserved to get coach of the year. Imagine that. The number of money line victories that shattered bookmakers' dreams, had them turning back in their yachts. As the Dolphins in that season with Flores, when they started out, I mean, they were getting hammered 50-0 every game. And then he wins 5 of the last 9 games to close out the year on the money line. That's the guy that should be rewarded. All right, enough about coaching. Just real quickly, we put any number of people on the spot. We still haven't been able to figure out what is involved and how do you win and what is the purpose of the in-season tournament in the NBA. Some second-round games were contested last night, and one of the players, of course, being a rookie, Jaquez Jr. With the Miami Heat, who won for the 6th time in a row, he mentioned the tournament and said, well, it was a tournament game and there's $500,000 at stake. And I'm thinking only a rookie would be concerned about $500,000 in the NBA. That is tip money for the pilot on their private jet for most of these players as they fly to the Bahamas during the All-Star break. What are you talking about? Have you figured it out, Lubie? Anything that's modeled after soccer, in my estimation, is a bad idea.
Yeah, but the soccer one, again, like we talked about the other day, is nothing like this. It's another tournament that's usually somewhere else, has nothing to do with the league. The games don't count, and they usually play the shit players. Like this is in season, the first week, and the good players are playing, and it counts. Like the Heat have now won 6 in a row. They went from 1-4 to 7-4. These games count toward their regular season record. That's nothing like soccer. Like I don't understand what this is at all.
It really hit you in the face because it's like opening night. Well, this is a tournament game. I tell you what, this is Group C. And the Thunder look to be the favorites here. But there was some distinction mentioned as to the relevance of the tournament by the rookie, Jaquez Jr. out of UCLA, who's doing a nice job so far. Tyler Hero out of the lineup, getting more minutes. And a kid, that after 11 years of college there at UCLA, I think he broke in with the Wizard. All right, we're going to run. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. That's today's edition of the Morning Briefing. I don't know if we enlightened you at all, but it is kind of strange there. How do they not own a judge in Ann Arbor, the alumni of the Michigan Wolverines? They're good enough to fuel this team with enough infusion of cash so that they can stay at the very top there during Harbaugh's tenure. How do they not have some judge they could have awakened in the middle of the night to get that injunction or restraining order that would have overturned the ruling of the Big Ten, who seems to have limited legal powers anyway, you would have to believe. My God. All right, we'll see you next time. For Mike Lubie Lubitz, I'm Jeff DeForest. Thanks for tuning in to today's edition of the Morning Briefing.